People talk all the time about forthcoming economic collapse, and people just can't visualize collapse. They think, when have we ever collapsed? Everyone talks about collapse, but things just keep going on. So I just want to refer to a few points in history to indicate when we have had collapse. In fact, this largely last 100 years, we've had 5 separate collapses, 3 absolute collapses and 2 near collapses. 1914 was an international financial system collapse. 1939 was an international financial system collapse, and 1971 was an international financial system collapse. In fact, every 30 years we largely get one. Perilously close to collapse, 1998 and 2008. So I've given you 5 collapses that are all within the last 100 years, give or take. 1914 was a bit just outside the 100-year range. So it's almost, if they were evenly spaced, every 20 years you would have a collapse. Collapse doesn't mean everybody is running around like headless chickens in the street every single time and there's just blood and guts pouring all over the place. We're talking about paper and financial systems. In 2 of those instances, they involved world wars, and the third one, they involved a massive Vietnamese war conflict in 1971. So let's go over this. 1914's collapse, there was a monetary conference. There's always conferences that occur post these events. So there was in 1922 in Genoa, Italy, where the major powers rewrote the rules of the game. So after every collapse, there's a little bit of a meeting, a little bit of a chit-chat and a chinwag. The control structure gets together and just shuffles the cards a bit and resets and carries on. And this is what I'm going to describe to you. So in 22 in Genoa, Italy, the major powers rewrote the rules of the game and attempted to reintroduce the gold standard. Yes, that is true. The gold standard existed before, and they attempted to reintroduce it and did it in a bad manner. After the 1939 collapse, there was a largely well-known international monetary conference, as you probably all know, as Bretton Woods. That was in 1944, after the world had stopped kicking chunks out of each other in what was known as the Second World War. The Bretton Woods conference led to what was then known fixed currency rates, which of course inevitably was set up once again to collapse, kind of like the EU system as that which has become pertinent with Theresa May's speech today. But anyway, I don't want to digress. Then after the collapse in 71, that was when Nixon suspended the tie of the dollars and convertibility for gold. That was a collapse of kind. Why? He was spending too many dollars and he didn't have the gold. And people started asking for the gold and giving him his dollars back. Guess what? Run on his currency, and it was a major financial collapse. So that then led to the Plaza Accord in 85 and then the Louvre Accord in 87. Note, when they reset the system, they don't do it all in one single meeting always. They tell you only part of the news in one meeting, then a year or 2 later then another one, and then another one. You won't agree to doing an entire journey unless someone first sells you the first leg, then the second leg, and then says, look, you're almost there, do the third leg, and says, sorry, it was always a 4-leg thing, you just got this one more to finish. So you get accords after accords. So you have, during these collapses, periods of a semi-chaos where there's largely meetings and things are being re-agreed and new agreements, and often it's not just one, but there are many. Then in 87, the Louvre Accord, that was the period of 71 to 1980. That whole 9 years, in fact, it's more than 9, no, it's 9 years. The whole 9 years was just a rabble of chaos rolling into it. It was stagflationary. Thank you. That was all just chaos, and the dollar price of gold went from $35 all the way up to $800 an ounce during that period. So it was all just stagflation. Then we got Paul Faulkner and Reagan that went for the strong dollar approach, the king dollar period, and he just squeezed interest rates, and ran an entire cycle and created killed bonds, the bond market, and yields went exceedingly high on bonds. And then we had the king dollar period. So dollar is the boss, and it was floating currencies and the hegemony of the dollar that introduced the petrodollar with the OPEC crisis of 70s, etc. That was the cycle. Then the sound dollar standard was successful roughly from 1981 to 2010. with a solid growth until 7, and then we had the 08-09 crash. Long economic expansions in the 80s and then again in the 90s. So since 1870 to 1971, the International Monetary System has had variations on a gold standard in various ways, with interruptions for major wars largely. That is what's gone on. For 30 years, from 80 to 2010, the world did not have a gold standard. We had a dollar standard instead, and this has now run very much close to running its course. Now we have no standard, and the anchors which exist in the international monetary system, it should come as no surprise that since 07 we've been living in confusion, volatility and suboptimal performance. So the end of that 30 era from 1980 has led to this point. So when the next collapse comes, there'll be more such things like the Genoa, the Bretton Woods, etc. events, and that's how they will move the posts. They'll rewrite the rules and do everything. But throughout all of that, gold never went away. It's, even gold has been standing there, whether it's been part of an official standard or not. And hence why I remain a precious metals bull during this particular period where we are in the chaos, suboptimal period of economic growth that we are in now. So if you think we have not faced economic collapse because you think it's just nuclear bombs going off and everyone running around in the streets and entire grid downs, you can have economic collapse without any of those things officially happening. 2008, the mobile network never went down, internet never went down. That only happened when we had our 7/7 events, much like 9/11. But that's a separate discussion. So broadly, we are already in a state of economic collapse right now, and we're in that muddle-through period, and all the accords will come. Plus, we see the emergence of the cryptos, which are often part of the solution of later accords. Don't be fooled. Keep your off-grid precious metals close to hand. Okay, speak to you soon.